I'm really excited today to be here with Jonathan Capehart, whose new book just came out, Yet Here I Am. And it's a really powerful first person story about who you are and how you got here. Congratulations. It's a big
Thank you.
undertaking and
Thank
it's
you
very
very much.
vulnerable.
That's what everyone's saying. I get why they're saying that, but for me, it is sort of like, of course it was going to be vulnerable. Of course it was going to be raw and honest. And I say that because there are two books that sort of form the foundation of why I went the route I went in writing this book and being vulnerable. The first is Personal History by Katharine Graham. To read the autobiography of one of the most powerful women in journalism and certainly one of the most powerful women in America, to read her be so raw and open and honest about her insecurities, about her fraught relationship with her mother, about how she made her way through after her husband's death. It impacted me in a way because I thought, wow, this is somebody who could write a completely different book. And no one would begrudge her sanding down or whitewashing parts of her past, and she didn't. And then 2 decades later, just about comes Charles Blow's book, Fire Shut Up in My Bones, which also raw, honest. It put into context, no pun intended, the fire and the passion that was behind every Charles Blow column in the New York Times. And so I thought, if ever I write a book, it has to be just in the mold of those two books. I got a really great piece of advice from my really good friend, Richie Jackson, who wrote the book Gay Like Me.
Mhm.
And he said to me, Jonathan, make sure you put yourself on every page.
Hmm.
Because he was also open and honest and raw and vulnerable in his book. And I was in the process of writing. And so I took that to heart.
You did write so powerfully about the silence surrounding your father and the long road to understanding his absence. How has reclaiming that story shaped your sense of identity and purpose today?
It was more coming to grips with that. First, finding out stuff about my father, and then in the process of writing, trying to put into words just what that silence was about my father. And it wasn't just my mother not wanting to talk about him, but really the extended family. It was like they all had a meeting and decided no matter what, we're not talking about him unless he asks. And if he does, we're going to make sure that we'd say the bare minimum and he doesn't ask again. I think I write in the book that my mother became expert at conjuring silence.
Mm,
And so whenever I tried to bring it up, she would conjure silence as if silence was like a bouncer
mm.
at a bar or a nightclub. And so dealing with that silence and how that has impacted me once I realized it was something I had to put it down on the page and then I had to walk away for a little bit because it meant dealing with not just the silence, but what the silence was covering up, but also what it meant to really, as a 50-something-year-old man, what it meant not to have a father
Mm.
and why I tended to gravitate towards father figures. These are usually people who saw something in me first and took me under their wings. Usually, those father figures were married to very strong women. I had the father figures and paid attention to their wives just as intently. I don't think that's an accident.
I thought one of the most moving aspects of your book was the tribute to your chosen family. And you touched a little bit about that, finding mentors and the father figures who shaped you. What did they teach you about leadership and the way to build a future and a family and a life for yourself, especially with these strong women that you were looking at these folks as family, or they are family, but you're also taking so many notes from them. So how did they shape you?
They treated everyone with respect and kindness and dignity, no matter who they were. And the more time I spent with them, the more I then realized, okay, so they're kind and decent people, but they're interesting. Watching and listening to them, I learned a lot. But then they were also interested. They asked me lots of questions, wanting to know all sorts of things that were happening, what I thought about current events, especially the mentors when I was in New York working at the Daily News, who wanted to talk about politics all the time and telling me their perspective and what their experiences have been, but always centering the conversation on, well, what do you think? One of my mentors, who was also my first boss, the president of Carleton College in Minnesota, which is my alma mater, I had a year fellowship after graduation. He loved the book and he loved what I wrote about mentors. He said, when I was younger, I had people I looked up to who were older than me. He's now in his 80s. He says, now I notice that as I got older, my mentors got younger. He counts me as one of his mentors. And I was like, wait, what? How? He said something about it's more about observing than about anything that I said. It's just a reminder to everyone that mentors are all around. Some identify themselves, some you identify, but oftentimes you could be a mentor to someone and not even know it just by being you.
There was a part of the book, I would say a bit of a recurring theme, maybe, of you being viewed as intimidating or unapproachable in predominantly white spaces. I'd love to hear what you think that says about America's discomfort and conflict with Black men, Black people, queer voices.
When I was writing about this particular episode where I felt really comfortable with my friends, they were family. And so I used a phrase that is very common in Black households. I said it, and the person said, what does race have to do with this? It had nothing to do with race for me, but everything to do with race for them. And it got to the larger conversation, which is it was in that town where I learned how to be Black in white spaces. And by that, I mean, it is not my determination of how Black I am. It is in the eye of the person who is looking at me. And so in some instances, I could be too Black. In other instances, I could be not Black enough. And in other instances, folks didn't want me to be Black at all. There's an unspoken, unwritten agreement when you are the lone Black kid in a group of white friends or in a white space. And that is, you don't bring up the fact that you're Black, and we won't even acknowledge the fact that you're Black. For African Americans, we're walking this tightrope because we don't know how Black we are to whoever is talking to us. That this too Black, not Black enough thing is also in the eyes of African Americans. I've gotten it from both sides. It is in the eye of the beholder. No matter how Black I know I am, I'm too Black for some, not Black enough for others.
There's no doubt, and you've been reporting on it, a political, polarized, anti-LGBTQ culture today. And I'd love to hear a little bit from you about how you see your role. How do we get through this?
We get through this by refusing to stop talking about this, about what's happening to the country in general and to us as LGBTQ plus people in particular. When I was at the New York Daily News on the editorial board, and when I was on the Washington Post editorial board, is, for lack of a better description, I viewed myself as an ambassador, initially an ambassador to the race, because I'm the first generation of African Americans to live in a country where all of the words of the Constitution applied to us because of the 64 Civil Rights Act and 65 Voting Rights Act. And so here I am going to school, being one of the few Black kids in the classroom and the only Black person probably folks have met. And so like, hey, here I am. I'm not this scary figure. I'm this person. So you go to a job like an editorial board, you bring all of yourself to the table. No one says that in the interview process, but once you're in the job, you then realize that if we're going to be talking about hate crime legislation, I'm not only the Black guy at the table, I'm the gay guy at the table. My lived experience factors into the conversation. Also, people should recognize that when I say I'm an ambassador to the race or an ambassador to the LGBTQ plus tribe, I am not saying that I am the voice of either community. What I'm saying is I am a voice of the community at a table that might not have our voices at it. As long as I am in a position where I can write about, speak about issues of importance, and there is an LGBTQ plus angle to it, I will be speaking about how what is happening, how it's impacting our community.
Yet here I am feels like a declaration of presence. For those folks who are still out there searching for their sense of home, their sense of self-worth, what final reflections would you offer on what it truly means to arrive?
When I use the word success, what I mean by success is however you define it.
Mm.
Obviously, some people define success as being wealthy. Some people define success as having a high-powered job. Other people might define success as being a great writer, but they love writing, but they haven't hit it big yet. But it's the passion that drives them. You can't have true success. You can't have a true sense of home until you know who you are. What does home look like to you? Who is there? And more importantly, how does your worldview make that happen? And only through living life, going through ups and downs, can you discover the boundaries that are either there because they've been erected by other people or that have been erected by you. Because as you start to learn who you are, you then start to realize how you want to be treated, how you want to live your life. And anyone who flies in the face of that, well, you then discover like, I don't need to be around those people. I don't need to be around these spaces for my own internal peace. Finding home is about really finding a sense of self because you can't really be home unless you're comfortable in your own skin and comfortable with who you are and being able to say to other people who might find you odd or strange or off-putting, intimidating, to be like, yeah, okay, fine. That's on you. I am perfectly comfortable. And that gets back to the original question that you asked that I realized that I never responded to about being told I'm intimidating or unapproachable. After a while, I just like, you know what? Okay, fine. If that's what you think, that's what you think. There's nothing I can do about it. Sometimes the feelings of intimidation or unapproachability might have nothing to do with you, might have everything to do with their own insecurities. Don't know.
Don't need to find out either. If it's not from a place of dark or mean or evil, which
Right.
knowing you, I know is not, then it's on them.
It's sort of like what I read about New York City that I didn't understand or realize or know until I moved to Washington and been here for at least a couple of years, and then realized that New York has a reputation of being wildly intimidating. The traffic, the crowds, the prices, everything. People are like, oh my God, that city, I couldn't possibly live there. I can't stand it. The people are so mean and unfriendly. And I likened New York City to an M&M, hard on the outside, soft on the inside. And if you've ever eaten an M&M, you know that it doesn't take a lot to break that hard outer shell. All you have to do is try. That's the thing about New York City is the people who succeed in New York, however they define it, and thrive in New York are the people who try, who say, I am going to try to make myself a part of this incredible city. For those folks who are intimidated by you or feel that you are unapproachable, think of yourself as the M&M. All they have to do is try.
Yet here I am is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. I'm so excited for you. Congratulations. I couldn't think of a better person to be out there and speaking right now and sharing your story to help others along. So thank you for being and joining us today at GLAAD, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Sarah Kate. Thank you so much.